The astronaut in the ruins, the quiet had weight. It wasn't just the absence of sound, but a thick presence, a heavy liquid that filled the room, climbed the walls, and drowned even the ticking of the hallway clock. Lucas sank into the sofa, the old leather one that still held the impression of her body on its left side. His eyes, dry and aching from staring at nothing, fixed on the flames. The fireplace was the only living thing in the house. Everything else, the books on the shelf, the Persian rug, the photograph on the piano, had become a museum of an extinct rain. Their rain. The first sip of whiskey was a mechanical act, a ritual to lubricate the seized gear of thought. The second already carried the familiar taste of escape. That's when the voice woke up. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a part of him, fossilized by pain, that only spoke in the dark. Too quiet, isn't it? It whispered in his mind with the tone of someone confirming an obvious and cruel fact. Lucas didn't move a muscle. It is, he thought back. It's the kind of quiet that has weight, that has volume, fills the whole room. You breathe and the silence comes in with it. Cold. She liked the silence. He argued mentally, said it was comfortable. Our silence was different. It had texture. It had the sound of her breathing, the rustle of the blanket when she turned over, the almost inaudible sigh before she fell asleep. That silence was alive. This one is just absence. It's an empty mold of the noise she used to make. A piece of firewood cracked, throwing a handful of sparks that danced and died in the air, ephemeral as promises from a past summer. In the orange ember, he saw the distorted reflection of his own face, a man in his early 40s, with weariness carved around his eyes and a days-old beard. The ghost of the man she had loved. Why do we do this? The question echoed within him, desperate. We build a universe around one person, a complete universe with its own laws of gravity, its own light. And then the person leaves, and the whole universe collapses. But the shards remain. She'd step on them in the dark. The voice laughed, a dry sound devoid of any joy. You didn't build a universe, you surrendered to one. You gave her the keys to your sun and your rain. Remember, he remembered? The universe began on a rainy Saturday in a small bookstore on Tulip Street. She, Clara, was cornered in the poetry section, trying to reach a book on the top shelf. He, 6'1" of shyness, offered help. Their fingers touched on the spine of Nerutha's, the Book of Questions. It wasn't an electric shock. It was a settling, like a tooth that had ached for years, without him knowing, had finally stopped. The sun of that universe wasn't a star in the sky. It was the way she crinkled her nose when she laughed, leaving tiny expression lines he loved to call maps of happiness. Gravity didn't pull toward the Earth's core, but toward the space between them on the sofa, a force that always drew them closer, shoulder to shoulder, foot over foot. They created their own language. Let's Cloud meant lying in bed on a Sunday, watching the light change on the wall. Red Alert coffee was the strong, bitter kind, drunk in silence, before important meetings, a look of complicity between the mugs. Rain wasn't just rain, it was the sound of the world being washed, her phrase that he stole and used as his own. He colonized the house. The little kitchen windowsill with the herb planter she insisted on overwatering became the province of the lazy basil. The rug in front of the fireplace was the wool sea, where they anchored in the late afternoons. The house wasn't made of bricks and mortar. It was an archipelago of shared moments, every corner baptized by an intimate memory. The inner voice in those days was asleep. It whispered good things. You're lucky, it said. And he was. The universe was small, perfect and bright. They were its only passionate inhabitants. You donated the whole plant, roots and flowers, the voice continued, pulling him back to the frozen present. And now you cry because the harvest is over. He brought the glass to his mouth. The whiskey burned, a small controlled fire in his esophagus, a manageable pain to distract from the other. But it was worth it. Her son was worth it. Of course it was. That's why you're here, talking to a ghost in your own head, while her ghost occupies every inch of this house. It was true. Clara was everywhere. She was in the sofas, hollow, her body no longer filled. She was in the frosted glass tumbler he was using, which was her favorite for red wine. She was in the way the wooden beam creaked in the cold, because she always said, wise and smiling, listen, it's the house talking to us. She was in everything, except the one place he needed her to be, by his side, her head on his shoulder, her feet under his legs. A larger piece of firewood gave way with a dull thud, making the flames recoil for a moment before surging back stronger. A meteor hitting his desolate planet. What do I do now? How do you dismantle a universe? The voice fell silent for a moment, as if thoughtful. You don't dismantle. You learn to inhabit the ruins. The ruins. He walked through them every day. Kitchen was a battlefield of savory memories. With every burnt toast, he never did learn to use the toaster right. He heard her laugh. Sweetheart, it's to toast, not to carbonize. The bathroom held the echo of her perfume, a scent of jasmine and peach that still seemed to linger in the damp air after the shower. He had stopped washing her pillowcase, and sometimes, in the deepest insomnia, he would pull it close and bury his face in it, searching for a trace that water and time had already taken. The bed was the epicenter of the disaster. Her side, his side. Her side remained untouched, the sheets smooth, the pillow flat. A kind of empty sanctuary. He slept rigidly on his side, sometimes waking in the middle of the night with his arm outstretched, seeking a warm body that was no longer there, touching only emptiness and cold linen. You take this heavy silence and you listen to it, the voice went on, softer now, until it starts to tell a different story. Until the sound of your own breathing stops being an echo of hers and becomes just yours. Your own music, however off-key it may be, and the longing. The question was an almost broken thread of voice inside him. The longing stays. It becomes a piece of furniture. It's a heavy, ugly piece you bump into every day. But in time, you learn to navigate around it. And one day, maybe you even put a cloth over it, decorate it, make it part of the landscape. It doesn't disappear, just stops cutting you. He looked at his hands, illuminated by the dancing fire. These hands had held her face in countless kisses, had tickled her feet, had put up the bookshelves together, her holding the books, him hammering, had drawn together the borders of that private country that was their love. Now they seemed strange, large, and useless, floating in his empty lap. The process of dismantling was slow and made of tiny, heroic acts. In the first week, he couldn't even enter the guest room, which she used as a studio. When he finally did, the smell of oil paint and turpentine brought him to his knees. He stayed there, on the floor, hugging an empty easel, sobbing until he had no air left. A month later, he managed to collect the brushes, wash them meticulously, and store them in a box. He didn't have the heart to throw anything away, just deactivated the territory, turned the studio into a warehouse of longing. The province of the lazy basil was next to fall. The plant died, of course. He, distracted in his grief, had neglected it. When he noticed, it was dry, with brown brittle leaves. Pulling it from the pot was an act of violence against himself. He felt every root loosening from the soil, like a thread of memory being ripped out. He threw it in the trash and spent a long time washing his hands, scrubbing the brown earth that insisted on staying under his nails. Slowly, he began to remap the house, not to erase her, but to survive in it. He moved the sofa, breaking the sacred geography of the wool sea. The first night in the new arrangement was strange. He felt like an intruder. But on the second, he noticed the view of the window was better. He bought a new automatic coffee maker. The red alert coffee lost its meaning and became just coffee. Bitter, yes, but just coffee. The greatest challenge was the sounds. He had forgotten how the house sounded without her. The specific creak of the third stair. The sound of water running through the pipes when someone used the bathroom. The random clinking of silverware while doing the dishes. The house, which used to talk, now only emitted solitary mechanical noises. He started leaving the radio on, tuned to a smooth jazz station, just to fill the frequency she had occupied. It was a crutch, but it allowed him to breathe without swallowing the silence. It's too long, he thought, exhausted. The road back to myself. The voice seemed to smile with a touch of pity and understanding. There's no road back. The yourself that walked into that story doesn't exist anymore. You were burned and remade in her fire. What's left is a new man, carrying the scars like dead embers. Learning to walk with the weight, Lucas took a deep breath. The air was still cold, but it no longer seemed to cut his lungs. The flame doesn't go out, the voice concluded, almost in a final whisper. It just changes form. From love, it turns to memory. From memory to wisdom. One day, who knows? It becomes light again, and not heat. The fire in the fireplace was beginning to die down, the high flames giving way to a bed of glowing embers that pulsed like a slow heart. The light receded, and the darkness around him grew denser, more personal, less frightening. It was no longer the darkness of the empty house. It was the darkness of his room, of his night. He stood up, his bones creaking in protest after hours of stillness. The emptiness beside him on the sofa was still palpable, but now he could name it. It was no longer just Clara's absence. It was a space. A devastated space. Yes, ravaged by loss, but which for the first time he recognized as belonging to him. A territory to be rebuilt, not as a kingdom for two, but as the refuge of one. He filled his glass one last time. It's not to drown the voice or the pain, but in a strange, silent toast. A toast to the ruins. It's a toast to the astronaut who survived the depressurization of his universe, and now, feet on strange soil, needed to learn to breathe in new air. Until tomorrow then, he thought. He directed the thought to the voice, to the silence, to the ghost in the sofa's hollow, to Clara in all the places she still inhabited. This time, the inner voice didn't answer. Its work for that night was done. Turned off the table lamp and went up the stairs. The third step creaked a sound that was his alone now. In the hallway, he stopped in front of the door to the room that had been the studio. He didn't go in. He just touched the doorknob, cold under his fingers, and continued to his bedroom. He let the embers die alone in the fireplace, painting the world in ash and gold until dawn. Their universe had collapsed in a silent cataclysm. But the astronaut at last, his heart still in tatters, but his eyes dry, had his feet firmly on the floor of his own home. Ready to, the next day, begin cataloging the shards, and perhaps one by one, learn to see in them not the memory of the broken vase, but the faint reflection of a new light. The first step of the rest of your life is always taken in absolute solitude. The second, perhaps, is already in search of a new song. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel to receive more videos like this. Thank you for watching.